Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Tina and I'm doing a series of my experience of moving from Vancouver, British Columbia to Calgary, Alberta. When I was deciding to make the move, I learned best by watching videos, especially other people's real experiences versus reading articles made by news and just seeing what it's like moving here and living in Calgary. So I thought I would also share my experience. So if you're interested in moving to Calgary from elsewhere in Canada, you could also hear someone's experience as well. So a little about me is I was born and raised in Vancouver. I lived there my whole life, aside from a few years abroad. I've always loved traveling. And as you may know, you hear probably on the news all the time that Vancouver is getting more and more expensive and more unaffordable if you want to be a homeowner, and especially recently, even if you just want to rent for the rest of your life, unless you make lots of money. So I was fortunate that I was able to keep my job and move to Calgary, so I thought I would try it out. So I'll share the reasons why I decided Calgary compared to instead of other cities in Canada. When I was deciding on what city I would like to move to in Canada that wasn't Vancouver, the big factors for me was that it wasn't too small a city, it had to be more affordable than Vancouver, and also because I am Asian, it was very important there was a T&T as well. So if you look at different locations of T&T, there isn't too many across Canada. There's Toronto, which is way more expensive than Vancouver, or about the same. There's Vancouver. There was one that also just opened up in Montreal. So when I was looking at T&T locations, Calgary actually had 3 and now 4 locations. So that was a big motivation for me as well. I also ended up picking Calgary because if I had to fly home for any reasons such as family or an emergency, it is only an hour and a half flight, and usually flights are pretty affordable. During most of the year, especially the shoulder seasons, there actually are round trip flights with a budget airline for under $100 round trip. And even the most expensive seasons, so during the Stampede in Calgary, round trip flights are just a bit over $300. So those were the driving factors for me, that it's a new city that's more affordable, but it's not too different and not too far from home. 2 other reasons that I settled on Calgary is because Calgary is a pre-developed city, so I find that any amenities that I would like back in Vancouver, such as gyms or access to things like different types of classes, or just like having access to hiking and those kind of stuff, is very similar because Calgary is a decent sized city where there's like 1 million people that live here. Other big thing was house prices. So I'm renting my first year with my partner, but after a year, if we decide that we do enjoy Calgary, we would hope to buy. And that was a driving factor as well, because in Calgary, not only am I able to buy with my partner, but if I need to, I can also buy on my own, which would be a nice option to have. Unlike Vancouver, where lots of people not only have to buy with their partner, but also need a hefty down payment or help from their family as well. Prior to moving to Calgary, I had some expectations and worries, obviously for myself, and also when I share it with people that want to move to Calgary, and them sharing their worries for me as well. So the biggest things I'm worried about is obviously lack of transit, because I hear Calgary is a very driving, car demanding friendly city and not very transit friendly. And in Vancouver, I did not own a car, and I really depended on the transit system or my friends to drive me around. The second thing that I was worried about is the winters here. I did move here just a month ago, so I wouldn't be able to give a true reaction until later this year. And then my third worry about Calgary that I hear about is that there's lack of greenery here, and that Calgary is actually very brown and very flat. So those are my biggest concerns. So yeah, I'll let you know later on in this video what my experience has been so far. Now that I've lived here for a month, I want to share the pros and cons that I've experienced so far. If you're considering moving to Calgary as well, something for you to consider. And also, if you did make the move to Calgary from wherever else in Canada, I would love to hear your reactions to my pros and cons list. I always like to deliver the bad news first, so I will share the cons of living in Calgary so far that I've experienced. So for me, one of the cons is, I don't know if it's really a con, because for me it really outweighs the weather in Vancouver. So in Vancouver, if you're not familiar with it, it rains like I don't know, 90% of the year, or at least, if not raining, at least gloomy. I was fortunate that I live in a suburb of like an adjacent satellite city called Richmond, where it actually rained 30% less. But the gloom and the doom did get to me in Vancouver, despite me being born and living most of my life there. So I actually had a happy light I used every day for several hours a day. I took vitamin D. And so since being here, the sun has really helped. But because this is a cons list, I think one of the cons of Calgary that people, at least I hear locals saying a lot, is how the weather here is very inconsistent. So if you're someone that maybe enjoys Vancouver weather or enjoys living somewhere where you can always kind of predict what the weather is going to be like within the same day, Calgary is probably not for you, because in Calgary, within the span of 10 minutes, it can go from super sunny and hot to really windy and cold to snow to hail. And so it's really hard to dress appropriately for the day. One of the tips that I hear about Calgary is it's not about having the best heavy winter jacket. It's about having your layers and being able to take them off and add them on as you go during your day. Having said that though, everyone does seem to drive in Calgary. So if you have a car, just make sure you have lots of options in your trunk. So that would be a con in Calgary, is that the weather is pretty inconsistent. And I think that would really matter if you're someone that really dresses for fashion or have certain outfits that you want to wear, because during the whole day, the outfit you leave your house with in the morning might not be the best outfit 5 minutes later or even a few hours later. Other con that I kind of touched on before is that it is 100% less green here. I did come in March, so it's still the tail end of winter, so nothing has regrown yet. I don't know what the summer will be like, but I would have to say that Calgary, compared to Vancouver, isn't the city where they really thought about building lots of green spaces intermingle in the city. Also, I think it's because in Vancouver, a lot of our trees in our downtown core can be there year round, whereas in Calgary, you can't really have trees year round except the evergreen tree. So I can see why that is. So I think a con for people would be there's less greenery. For me personally, I thought that would have an impact on me because I love being in the forest, I love camping, I love hiking when I'm in Vancouver. But honestly, being here, the pro of the sun and, you know, me having a bigger space to live in kind of outweighs the con of less greenery. And I know that when the summer hits, I can just drive over to the Rockies, do a lot of hiking, and just enjoy the greenery that way. Also, one thing I did to mitigate the lack of greenery is I order this shower curtain from AliExpress. It was only like $17. And I think this shower curtain is exactly a picture from North Vancouver in BC. So, you know, if you're someone that will miss the greenery, it's not very difficult or hard to add some greenery into your apartment, just in case you missed that. Other con, which obviously is no surprise if you decide to make the move, especially from Vancouver to Calgary, probably not a surprise if you come here from Winnipeg or Saskatchewan or Ontario, is that it is a lot colder here. To add to my first con about inconsistent weather is that within Calgary on the same day, there are greater temperature swings. So I missed the bulk of winter where there are the infamous Chinooks, where the temperature can change 20, 30 degrees in a span of a few hours. But the past few weeks of being here, in one day, like today for example, it's pretty warm, it's 10 degrees, it's sunny right now, but in the morning it was as low as -4 degrees, and this evening it'll probably go back down to -4. So that's a con. It's definitely colder here. But for me, the sun is the bigger perk. But I think if you're a cold weather person, if you're an anti-cold weather person, probably not really for you to be in Calgary. You'll just have to adjust by having the right layers of clothing. I do have to say that naturally, I do prefer cold weather, so I'm not really minding living in Calgary. Other con for me, and it's something that I am going to have to find a way around, which I'm doing right now, as you can see by my water bottle, is I've been adding these meal drops to my water. I don't have a lot of followers, but Meal, if you want to sponsor me, I would gladly take it because I drink this every day, all the time. So the biggest con for me about Calgary so far is that I think growing up in Vancouver, we've been blessed with really good drinking water from a tap. In Calgary, I also drink straight from a tap. I'm not sure what normal Calgarians do, if they have a filter or whatever, so maybe I just need a filter. But in the meantime right now, I'm just adding flavor drops to my water. The tap water in Calgary doesn't taste the best. And I've had water in an apartment, in a house, and I don't know how to describe it. It just doesn't taste as fresh, doesn't taste as clean. But I'm well aware that Vancouver does have really great tasting tap water. So that's a big con for me because that's something that I'll have to adjust, which I am doing. So Mio, if you're listening, if there's some publicity person, please sponsor me because I drink Mio every day right now. My last big con about living in Calgary, although I think it's easy to mitigate if you're smart about it, is it definitely is a car heavy city and not transit friendly at all. I did a transit experience as well one video before if you want to check it out, where I took the bus and the C train. So yeah, I think living in Calgary, you definitely do need a car, but depending where you live, you could work around it and just adjust your life accordingly. So for example, I lived in an area that's called the Beltline, where you can walk to a lot of places like grocery stores, restaurants, bars, gyms, and that kind of stuff, and you don't need a car. However, always in the summer, if you want to check out the mountains, you will need a car, and in the winter, if you want to adopt sports like skating or snowboarding or skiing, you'll also need a car. So I think a con would be that you do need a car, and that could be an adjustment if you currently don't have a car, depending where you're moving in from. However, I think there's ways around it, and I find that like even in Vancouver, I took transit all the time, and there were some nights where I took an Uber because it was just too late, or just like the buses weren't as frequent. I do think Ubering every now and then when you need to will still be cheaper than buying and insuring and maintaining a car, so it's something to consider. I also don't really mind taking transit because I find it's a good time to read or to just listen to podcasts. I personally think Vancouver is a very transit friendly city. However, I have friends who think Vancouver is definitely not transit friendly. But having said that, with that mindset coming to Calgary, I would say it's definitely not as transit friendly, but it's not impossible. And I think the off times you do have to pay for an Uber probably is fine way to work around having a car. Just make sure if you decide to move here and you rent or you buy, to buy or rent strategically. Now I'll share the pros of living in Calgary so far compared to Vancouver, in my personal experience since being here for a month. So the first pro is obviously housing prices. As I shared earlier, we are renting our first year, so I can only speak on renting. I know the housing market, if you want to buy, has gone up quite a bit within Calgary because everyone's moving from elsewhere in Canada to Calgary. So sorry, locals. So it's kind of driving up the housing prices. But I have lots of commentary on that, which I'll probably do in the other video. But I'm not an expert, so this is just my personal opinion. But anyway, so one of the pros so far is that renting here is a lot more affordable. I would say that we are renting right now as a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. We're paying $17.50 a month, and in the area we live in, if there was an equivalent in Vancouver, we could easily be paying upper 2000s. So yeah, I think renting here is a lot more affordable, and it's not just the idea of just 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, but also like each bedroom and each bathroom and each living space is bigger in Vancouver. Like in Vancouver, I felt like when I've stayed at 2-bedroom, 2-bathrooms, is that the room isn't quite a full bedroom, it just fits the queen bed, whereas here we have our queen bed and we could fit like a desk or a yoga space right beside our bed, and there's still lots of room to move around. So that's the biggest pro, is the rental prices and also the space you get for your dollar. The second pro of moving to Alberta compared to staying in BC, obviously this is just for this because I don't know what the other taxes are like in other provinces, is that there is only one tax here, which is the federal tax. There is no PST in Alberta. So if you're shopping for goods that usually have both taxes, like GST and PST, then that will be a big perk. But having said that though, the income tax here in Alberta is slightly different. So I actually do get taxed a bit more on my salary, which I wasn't expecting. A big pro here, which I've mentioned already a few times, is that it is way sunnier here. And coming from Vancouver, which is also called Raincouver, it's been so great for my mood. I feel kind of silly because I actually pack my happy light, but I turned it on my first day, and since then I haven't turned it on. And even on days here when it's snowy or there's overcast, it's still just a lot brighter. A fun fact about Calgary is that it is, I think, the sunniest city in Canada after Medicine Hat, and there are 333 days of sun a year here. So that is a big pro if you're someone like me that is heavily affected by the seasonal affective disorder or lack of sun. And to piggyback on the pro of that sunnier here is that there is also virtually no rain here. So when we were packing to move to Calgary, my partner is actually from Calgary, and I was like, oh, should we pack these umbrellas? And he was like, I don't remember when I ever used a umbrella in Calgary, because since being a month here, There has been like rain, I guess, but it's always been like very sporadic and like maybe lasts like 5 to 10 minutes and then it's gone. Whereas I feel in Vancouver, like it'll rain the all day and it'll be consistent and it'll be a drizzle and that would just be your life. So zero rain here has been amazing. I love it. Other pro slash con here, I feel a lot of my pros and cons have caveats, is that yes, you do need a car to get everywhere in Calgary if you are leaving past your neighborhood or you want to maybe like check out different areas, as transit isn't the best here. However, a big pro is that when you do drive, there is virtually zero traffic. Having said that, I'm fortunate to work from home, so I don't know what the rush hour traffic is like. But when we're driving on the weekends to and from places, to different quadrants, the traffic, I guess for a Calgarian, it could be like traffic, but from someone coming from Vancouver, the traffic is non-existent because it's always moving. And the way the highways are built here is that there's always a flow going. So like, I guess it could seem like traffic in the sense that like you have to drive everywhere and you cover greater distances. But in terms of like sitting and standstill traffic, which you experience in Vancouver when you're in Cambie or Oak or Granville during the weekend, is like non-existent. Like here, like you're always moving. You can go from one place to the other and it would take you like 15-20 minutes, and I'm like, how do we cover that distance in like that amount of time? Whereas Vancouver, I could move like a kilometer and it'd be like half an hour. So I feel there's no traffic, there's better flow here. I can't speak for rush hour, so if you're someone that's moving to Calgary and you have to go to and from the office, that's something you'll have to research or see. But yeah, so far I love the lack of standstill traffic, especially on weekends, getting to and from places. Other pro of moving to Calgary, but this isn't like a Calgary is better than other cities. This is just a pro of moving to a new city, is that there's lots of cool events to check out. I feel like Calgary it's a decent enough size city. I think it's trying to grow quite a bit, and I think it sees that it's attracting a lot of people from elsewhere in Canada. So I find that every weekend, if you look for it, there are events in different communities. There's lots of like new restaurants and new bakeries, new bars with new themes or arcades. So I really appreciate that. And also I bought tickets to 2 concerts coming up, and I found that the ticket prices were slightly cheaper for the same artist than in Vancouver, and the venues were also a bit smaller, so more intimate. So I thought that was really cool too. If you're someone that likes checking out concerts, of course you run the risk of if that artist will also stop in Calgary, because not every artist will stop in Vancouver and Calgary, but the artist I want to see happens to come into Calgary as well, so that's kind of great. I just want to wrap up my video about my experience and pros and cons of moving from Vancouver to Calgary. I'm not going to upload regularly, as I just want to share my experience as I go. If you have any questions or things you want to see about moving to Calgary, please comment down below. I'll probably do a video about what my experience was like moving my stuff to Calgary and what resources I use, such as moving companies and that kind of stuff. I can also share a video about how to rent here and how to find a place. And yeah, if you have any suggestions for me, I would love to hear it, because I want to be a resource as I am actively making the change right now. And if it's something that you want to do as well, you want to do your research, so feel free to ask away. All right, bye guys.